Hello everyone. So today's card marks the start of the MFT September release countdown. So I am showing some brand new products that will not be available until next week. So make sure to check out my blog post that'll be linked directly below the video. There'll be all the info in there. I am starting off with a piece of primitive cream cardstock from MFT that I die cut with the largest die from the Blueprints 1 die set. And then I'd coated it with my EK Success anti-static powder tool. And then I'm inking up this cluster of leaves image from the new Out on a Limb stamp set with Versamark ink and stamping it onto the cardstock. Since it's kind of fall feeling here, it's actually been raining for the past couple days, but fall is in the air and I was really into the fall colors the last little bit. So I dug through my embossing powder stash and I had these old containers of, these are old Stampin' Up! Embossing powders. I have had these probably for 10 years and hardly ever used them. So I've got kind of a mustard color and an olive color and a rust color of embossing powders. I will try to find something similar that I can link to in the supplies. And I'm just picking up the embossing powders with a drinking straw that I cut on an angle, so it's kind of like a little mini scoop. That way I can just scoop really small amounts over this stamp image and not waste a whole bunch of powder. And then just letting it fall off into a coffee filter, which is what I always use with my embossing powders. And doing it this way rather than just dumping the containers on it, like I said, I'm using really small amounts, so I'm not worried about the little bit that's going to get mixed up here. You could save it if you want, use it as a colored mixture, make more cards with it, whatever works, or you can just toss it. When you use such small amounts, it's going to last forever. But once I was happy with it, I grabbed, this is the Stampendous Frantage Chunky Metallic Seasonings. I'd shown this in a haul video a while ago and haven't had a chance to use it yet. But basically, it's really, really chunky. It won't stick to Versamark very well just because it's so chunky. I think if you used maybe a really thick, maybe pigment ink or maybe a really thick and sticky embossing ink, it might stick. But it's more meant to be kind of scattered onto the cardstock like I did here. So I just scattered it on, and then you have to heat it from underneath. Otherwise, if you aimed your heat tool at the front of the card, it would blow off all of that chunky embossing powder. So kind of hard to show on camera, but I heated the cardstock from underneath with my heat tool. And it took a little while, but finally melted everything. So I got this cool multicolored fall cluster of leaves and then all the little speckles from that Frantage embossing powder, which turned out really fun. So once I was done with that, I die cut the trunk. This is from another new set. This is the new Dynamics die set called Out on a Limb as well. And they all coordinate quite nicely. I was going to stamp the trunk, but because I had all the little speckles of embossing powder, I thought it would just be easier to die cut it. So I die cut it from some brown cardstock. And then I've got some jelly bean green cardstock that I also die cut with the same large die from the Blueprints 1 set, just so they're the same size, so that I could line up this Snowdrifts die. Obviously you can use it like his hills or anything. So I got that lined up so I could cut some grass for my main image, and then figured out what sentiment I wanted to use from the set. And then holding everything in place so that I can kind of get it laid out the way I wanted it, I coated the green cardstock with the anti-static powder tool as well. I was originally going to stamp it just in green ink, just to kind of have everything a little more subtle, but I was having so much fun with the embossing powder that I wanted to keep going and do it some more. So I used the anti-static powder tool and then inked up this thank you sentiment from the set and stamped it with the Versamark ink. And then I didn't realize I was kind of off camera here, but I just did the same thing, picking up those 3 colors of embossing powder and just sprinkling them over the sentiment. So I've got this fun little multicolored embossed sentiment. And then once it cooled off after a minute, after I had melted it, I just used my fingers to wipe off any of the anti-static powder residue. And then applied a good amount of adhesive because it warped just a little bit with the heat of the heat tool and adhered that into place. And then I'm just going to use a little bit of my Tombow Mono Multi to adhere the trunk into place. So super easy. I decided to keep the rest of the card completely simple and just let the focus be on this cool embossed multicolored leaf image. And applying a ton of adhesive to the back of this primitive cream cardstock because this warped quite a bit from all the heat embossing. And then I just die cut a piece of brick red cardstock with the larger largest die from the Blueprints 2 die set, which I tend to use a lot the last few months. It just makes for layering so nice. So did that, and then I'm adhering it to Primitive Cream cardstock card base, which is a standard A2 size card base. And for the inside of the card, I wanted to stamp the tree again using the same colors I used on the outside. But Jelly Bean Green ink from MFT is a very dark ink, and I wanted a lighter impression. So I just experimented on some scrap paper here, inking out the stamp and then stamping it off a couple times to see what saturation of ink I wanted to. It's just called generation stamping. And I really liked how the third generation looked. So I did it a second time, inked it up, stamped it off twice, and the third time I'm going to stamp it on the inside of the card. And it's a little bit blotchy because I didn't clean the stamp after using the Versamark. So the Versamark residue left over kind of made the ink blotchy, but I kind of liked how that looked, so I'd left it. It just kind of gave a cool texture to those leaves. And then I'm doing the exact same thing with the trunk. I'm inking it up with MFT's Chocolate Brown ink, which again is a really, really dark brown ink. And then stamping it off a few times to see which generation I like the best for the inside of the card. And again, I liked the third the best. So I inked it up again, stamped it off twice, and then the third time I'm going to stamp that on the inside of the card. So I wanted it to be light enough that you can write over it with a ballpoint pen and it's not going to interfere with the message. And then the sentiment is also from this stamp set, and this time I just inked it up with the chocolate brown ink and stamped it as is so that it stood out really well. And then there's two little mini leaf clusters in the set as well, so I inked those up with the Jelly Bean Green ink and stamped those the first time. And that's all there was to it. So like I said, these are a sneak peek, so I will be including links to these products, but if you click on them, it'll take you to a blank page for now. Once they're all released next Tuesday, everything will be live. And like I said, all that info will be in my blog post, which is linked below. So make sure to check that out. And thank you guys so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping my videos. And I will see you all in the next one. Bye.